Time for the week 3 recap. Jump right into the headline. Got to be efficient in this one. Have to. I'm already not being efficient by wasting 30 seconds up front here, but we got this. I'm going to do a good job here today. Week 3 headline, bit unconventional. I've got an unconventional one for you. I'm going to go with Nothdurft's domination. I didn't really dig deeply for one, but I think this is all worth noting. This is one of the most dominant starts that I can think of through 3 weeks. You've got Nothdurft right now is just absolutely lapping the field. You look at points scored, right, for the season. Nothdurft is 86 points ahead of Andrew, who is second. And then you look at the teams from second to 11th. That's from Andrew down to Dylan. There's only a 41-point gap from second through 11th. Over 2 times that is the separation from first to second. That is insane. That's just how utterly dominant Nothdurft has been. Everyone else, largely pretty even. But one team just running away with it through 3 weeks. And then you look at that category that I always love to point to, record if everyone played everyone each week. Well, Nothdurft, as we know, has led the league in scoring each of the first 3 weeks. That means he's 33-0. He would not have lost to anybody. The next best in that category is me. I'm at 19-14. So Nothdurft 14 games ahead of everybody in record if everyone played everyone each week. And then once again, just like in points scored, the difference between second and 11th, me down to Dylan, is just 7 games. Whereas it is exactly double that from first to second, with Nothdurft having a 14-game lead over myself. Insane. I mean, it is just, it's Nothdurft and then it's everybody else so far. We've seen some hot starts before in this league, but this one feels unmatched. And, we'll see if he can keep it up, but definitely has set expectations high for the rest of the season. All right, let's jump right into the matchups, and we're going to stick with Nothdurft. Why not? Leading the league in scoring once again, 138.78 to 104.63. And it's the third time in these 3 weeks. Nothdurft, just unbelievable consistency. He's scored between 137 and 139 points all 3 times. Matchup MVP was a guy who I was critical of last week, Kyron Williams, and I'll continue to be critical of him here despite the 30.6 points. Again, rather inefficient, right? Under 4 yards per carry. He's been under 4 yards per carry all 3 weeks thus far. But he's doing exactly what he did last year. He has a knack for scoring. His volume is unbelievable. 26 touches in this game, 3 touchdowns. He's got 5 scores on the season already. And over 20 touches in 2 out of the 3 games. I mean, especially right now without Cup and Nakua, he's the centerpiece of their offense. And so as long as he keeps seeing this volume, he is going to be great. I think the day will come, whether it's late this year, next year. I believe the day will come where he gets replaced. But it certainly doesn't appear to be happening anytime soon. And so you just enjoy the ride right now as Nothdurft. Other great performances here. Lamar Jackson, who is now the quarterback 3 on the season. He's scored 27 plus in 2 out of 3 weeks. Outside of Josh Allen, probably not a quarterback that you would rather have in fantasy football right now. than Lamar. And then you have Rashee Rice, who's up to the wide receiver 4 on the season. And you look back on it now, Nothdurft getting him in the 6th round, 61st overall, incredible steal. It was predictable that it would be a steal. I don't think anybody necessarily expected it to be this to this extent. Otherwise, one of us would have drafted him before that 6th round. But his ESPN ranking was so low, and it was because of that legal situation that he was attached to. And here you are, Nothdurft greatly benefiting from his willingness. It was a great move by him because I want to say Rice was ranked around 70, 75. I don't exactly remember, but I think it was around there. Nothdurft decided, hey, I'm going to take him about a round before his ranking. I'm going to secure him. Whereas I think a few others, myself included, kept thinking, man, let's keep waiting on this. This could be unbelievable. Getting him at you get him at 70 or so. Well, it ended up not paying off, and Nothdurft really reaping the rewards there. What else do we got? Alvin Kamara keeps going, 14.2. He's the running back too. Not a guy I really believed in this year. I do have him in one league because just like Kyren Williams, you knew that the volume would be there, and this offense has been better than expected so far, even with their step back in week 3. Just everything is kind of working out right now for this squad. The only thing is, right, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 34, he's been a relative disappointment. So if you look at it as Nothdurft, I think better days are ahead for Wilson. He's still getting the targets. He's got 26 through 3 games. It's only 1 touchdown. He hasn't topped 60 yards yet. We know that Garrett Wilson is a better player than that. And Aaron Rodgers at least looks, healthy. I don't know exactly where he's at. Clearly this isn't the Aaron Rodgers of 5 years ago, but he's healthy and he certainly is better than the bums that the Jets had last year that Wilson found a way to produce with. So I think that maybe Wilson isn't going to take that leap forward that some had hoped and become one of the real alpha studs of the NFL. Maybe he doesn't quite have that in him, but he should be better than this. And so if you're Nothdurft, you look forward to that and think, man, my team still has another gear that it can get to. Take a quick look at the bench. One thing I want to note, David Montgomery, Jameson Williams, that was a great move. I think you could have made a very strong argument to start Williams, and Nothdurft stuck with what has worked. He stuck with Montgomery, and man, did it pay off. That ends up being a 19-point difference, as Williams did have his first rough game of the season. Elsewhere on the bench, Deontay Johnson had a huge game, and Andy Dalton stepped in. Andy Dalton looked really good. I watched a significant amount of that football game, and Andy Dalton was awesome. Deontay Johnson was the beneficiary of that quarterback change. What did he end up with? 14 targets. 14 targets. And Deontay Johnson, we know what he's capable of. He's had great seasons for fantasy football in the past. He just hasn't had quarterback play the last couple of years. And so, hey, as long as Dalton is playing, you got to feel good here. The thing is, how long is Dalton going to start, right? If you're Carolina, I don't know. Realistically, you're not a playoff team. And so at some point, even if Dalton is playing relatively well, you're probably going to go back to Bryce Young at some point and just for the final time kind of decide, what do we have here? Give him one more shot I could see them like sitting him for a month and then going back to him. And then that would be it for Bryce Young. It's kind of like a now or never. We're going to move on from you if you don't get it done at this point. That's the way I see it playing out, but who knows? Nobody knows. Carolina probably doesn't even know. If Andy Dalton keeps winning them games, they will keep him in. I just don't think that's realistic. I think Dalton could play fairly well and Carolina still lose. But all in all, for Nothdurft, 6-0, and as already detailed, just crushing the league through the first 3 weeks. So Dave Horvath is on the losing end of this one. And it wasn't a bad week, 105-ish points. That's right now, that's not a horrible score. Saquon Barkley had his second huge game in 3 weeks. Sorry, Giants fans. I know that, you're obsessed with praying for his demise, but Barkley now, two pretty good performances, and he's the running back one in fantasy football. 2 weeks of 30 plus so far this season. He's been way better than I thought he'd be. I thought that, injuries and age and usage had maybe taken a toll on him, but he looks good, and God knows how long he's going to stay healthy. That's been a problem for him in his career, but right now he is, and he's dominating, and that's all that really matters. We got Jahmyr Gibbs was he was on the end of a pretty ridiculous play. It was a lateral from Amon-Ra St. Brown. Pretty beautifully designed play. They throw it downfield to St. Brown, and then just a designed lateral to get it to Gibbs with a head of steam in space, and he was able to take it into the end zone. You don't love to see that Gibbs is kind of hovering around this 15 touches mark. 15 in week 1, 16 in week 2. He was at 20. I'm sorry, 15 in week 1, 16 in week 3. He was at 20 in week 2. You just want it more like 20 every week as opposed to more like 15. But Montgomery is there, and Montgomery is really good at what he does between the tackles. And there's no reason for them to go away from him. And that's always going to cap Gibbs. Still been super consistent between 14 and 16 and a half points all 3 weeks. But that ceiling, like that elite ceiling, that really can't happen week to week unless Montgomery isn't around. So that's a little bit frustrating, but still Gibbs has been very good. And I would imagine Horvath happy with his investment. That's kind of where the good ends. I think Darnell Mooney was a really nice flex start. Horvath gets about 10 and a half out of him. And Mooney is now a top 40 receiver on the season, by the way. But these receivers that Horvath had in the starting lineup, very disappointing. Tank Dell, I think it's time to be a little bit worried about him. Great player, like really exciting. Don't love that he is seemingly third fiddle every week. I didn't expect that. I thought that Diggs would be the number 3 guy, and that's not the case. It's quite obvious that it's Collins, Diggs, Dell right now. Dell is averaging 6 targets per game through 3 weeks. They've tried to get him involved on some gadgety type plays as well. Those haven't hit. The big plays will come for Tank Dell. He's just too good for them not to. But the floor is way worse than I thought it would be. And part of this could be he suffered a serious injury last season. And maybe he needs some time to work back from that. But it definitely has been disappointing. He was someone who I thought was going to be quite exciting for fantasy from the get-go this year. And that's simply not the case right now. I wouldn't be giving up on him, but you need to see more. He's the wide receiver 60 as of now, and that's just not going to cut it for a fifth round pick. We talked about Rashee Rice, right? Rashee Rice was taken 2 picks after Tank Dell. And, I don't think on draft night anybody could have said, wow, what a horrible mistake to take Tank Dell there. But it looks really bad now. Seeing those two guys so close in the draft, and now there's basically 55 wide receiver spots between them just 3 weeks in. Zay Flowers struggled. The Ravens threw it 15 times. We know that this is a reality for the Ravens some weeks. Talked about it on here. There are weeks they don't throw. They didn't need to on Sunday. They didn't want to. And so Flowers struggled. And then you look on the bench where you have Jalen Waddle. He's the wide receiver 45. This is pretty much a disaster now, right? Until Miami can get Tua back or maybe bring in a viable quarterback, I don't think Waddle is usable. I had said as much last week, and that whole offense was terrible on Sunday. So this is an exciting looking young receiving group that Horvath has. Dell, Flowers, Waddle, even Keon Coleman of Buffalo. And then you have Darnell Mooney, you throw him in the mix. That's like an exciting young upside group. And right now it's a disaster. None of them inside the top 25 at the position. So Horvath is going to really have to figure something out there. You've got the 2 stud running backs, but really not much at receiver that you can count on. And Patrick Mahomes continues to be a problem. He's now the quarterback 14. He has yet to score 20 points in a single week. This is not what you drafted when you took him 35th overall. And this has been an ongoing discussion on here. Patrick Mahomes is not elite for fantasy anymore. They have changed their offense over the last couple of years. And it's funny, they're starting to almost transition, to me, into like a peak Patriots type team where they don't give a fuck how they win. Like, if 1 week Mahomes has to throw for 350 to win, that's how they're going to win. If 1 week they can run the ball 30 times and win, that's how they're going to win. If 1 week it's all on their defense, they don't care. They just find a way to get it done. It looks ugly often, which is such a stark contrast from the early Mahomes era where they were such a flashy, high octane team. It's way different now. And yeah, I mean, Mahomes, it's hard to envision him paying off. You've got a floor, which is nice, because Mahomes he's probably, the best or second best quarterback in the NFL, right? It's him or Josh Allen. Take your pick. So he's going to have a floor, but that ceiling, it is non-existent, and that was the case last season and into this year. One encouraging sign for Horvath, just a little kind of under the radar thing, Austin Eckler. Now, it sucks that he suffered a concussion on Monday, but he looks way better than I thought he would. I thought he was completely done. He was terrible last year. He has a little bit left. And so Horvath, he got him in the 7th round. If he could stay on the field, look, he's not going to get a crazy amount of touches. Brian Robinson is their workhorse. But like a 10 to 15 touches role, a guy that you could throw in your flex spot, Eckler seems viable there. He has yet to top 11 touches in a game, and yet he's averaging 10.3. He's averaging about a point per touch. Maybe more, right? 18, 30. He's got like 31 fantasy points on 22 touches. That's pretty good. It's unsustainable, but it shows that Eckler is not done, like some, myself included, thought. Horvath loses, drops to 3-3, but it's still been a good start to the year. And Horvath still finds himself in the top third of the league in scoring. Let's move along. Lorran, dominant victory. 120.19 to 39.04 Krieger. My God. Before we get into that, we will start with Lorran and the matchup MVP, which is Dak Prescott, who really volumed his way to 33.65. Dak Prescott threw it 51 times on Sunday, nearly 400 yards passing, 3 total touchdowns, one of them rushing. And Prescott scored 5 more points in week 3 than he did in weeks 1 and 2 combined. This is the dream with Prescott, right? This is kind of what last year was when he was so good for fantasy football. He was throwing the ball 40 plus times every week, and he was putting up huge numbers. And this is what you hope he's able to accomplish again, because they don't have a running game right now. Their defense looks horrible. Their defense, I don't know what's going on. Maybe they'll figure that out, but that is a fucking huge mess. And so they're going to have to throw the ball if that continues. And that's what you hope if you're Lorran is, hey, give me 40 plus pass attempts per game. I feel pretty good about Prescott. Aaron Jones. There's another guy who I thought was pretty close to done. Now, he looked good at the end of last season with Green Bay, but injuries, age, you figured that had to catch up to him. He's not done yet, and it's really awesome to see. He's averaging 5.5 per carry. He's got 2 roughly 100-yard games, still getting it done as a pass catcher as he always has. And Aaron Jones, here we are, running back 11 through 3 weeks. Really good value in the 5th round. Definitely, I think pretty easily the best pick. Well, not easily, because Jones and Pollard have both been pretty good this season. Both quite solid picks by Lorran. Pollard, of course, did struggle this week, but he was coming off of 2 strong performances before that. So those 2 running backs who Lorran got in the 5th and 7th rounds, they've worked out pretty well. Drake London, did he score again? He did. Yeah, so Drake London back-to-back weeks with touchdowns, 6 receptions each game. So right now he's got a floor to him. He definitely is the number 1 target in that offense. That offense is starting to look better. Not great yet. Clearly still room for improvement, but I think they're taking steps forward. I'm starting to feel good about London. Not like amazing. I still think he went earlier than he should have, but I'm starting to feel good about him as like, I think he finishes around wide receiver 15, somewhere between 15 and 20. And so I think you'll look at the end of the season and you're not going to be thrilled, but I don't think you're going to say, wow, that pick ruined my season. A pick that might ruin Lohan's season is Brandon Ayuk, because that looks terrible. It's funny. I forget what year it was. Maybe it was 2021 that Brandon Ayuk got off to that horrific start. Kyle Shanahan had put him in the doghouse in training camp. He got off to a horrible start. I remember Dylan had him, whatever year it was, and Dylan dropped him. And I thought it was very reasonable that he dropped him. And then, like, the moment that he dropped him, I ended up picking him up, and like instantaneously he took off. And it was one of those funny moments in fantasy sports because it was at the expense of Dylan. Um, we'll see what happens with Ayuk this year. I think better days are ahead. But like, man, this should have been a big game for him, right? Kittle out, Debo out, McCaffrey out. And hey, we'll talk about Juwan Jennings later. Juwan Jennings has always been a good player. It's nice to see. I was really happy to see him get his Sunday. He's always been a nice role player for them. But like, if you're Ayuk, you just got paid $120 million after you griped and whined. And now you got your chance to be the guy, and you go out and you put up 48 yards. Like, come on. That can't happen. He hasn't topped 50 yards yet. 10 targets was encouraging. Again, I think it'll get going. It's just like, if you're Lohan, you were thinking that this was going to be the breakout week, and instead you're sitting with wide receiver 64, who you took 39th overall. He needs him to get going. That really is key to this team. Travis Etienne's been all right. That offense has been so bad, so bad. And that's what's killing Etienne right now. He's yet to score over 13.3 in any game, but at least he has a floor. You've had double digits all 3 weeks. If that Jacksonville piece of shit can get going a little bit, Etienne should be fine, but God, they've been really, really bad. And then Kyle Pitts again. I said last week, I'm done. I'm done with Pitts. He had that bomb reception, 50-yard reception. It was awesome. Targets aren't there. 12 targets through 3 weeks. 3, 3, 2. Those are his reception totals in each of the first 3 games. I just don't see it. I don't know what the deal is. He is, funny enough, the tight end 8 on the season. That's how bad that position has been, averaging 6.8 per game, tight end 8. But no. Yeah, keep putting him in there because it's not like there are better options, but he's not worth the 6th round pick that he was taken. Looking at Lohan's bench quickly here. AJ Brown, you'll get him back. That's important. That's going to be huge. And then Jaden Reed, I think the moment that Jordan Love returns, I think Jaden Reed will become pretty damn nice to have. He was really good last year as a rookie. Awesome in week 1. They haven't thrown very much the last 2 weeks with Willis. So I think Lohan has a chance to have a really nice receiving group with Brown, Reed, London, and Ayuk. And then if Etienne and Jones can get you decent production, I was way out on this team. Like, I thought Lohan's season was over. And this is what's funny about fantasy football. Maybe I'll learn this someday, is that things change really quick. Because now I'm looking at this and I don't hate it. I think that the pieces are here to at least be a decent team. And a week ago, I truly thought that Lohan was done. But some things are turning out a little bit better than I thought they would. And we'll see if it can keep going for him. Now, on the other side here, I don't even know what to say. This is truly, I've been playing this game 15 years. Actually, I believe I've been playing this game longer than that. I think I've been playing this game 17 or 18 years because I was as like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, uh, playing in CBS sports leagues. I honestly, I forgot about that until now. I played in a CBS sports league 1 or 2 years before our league started. I just joined a random one. That's how fantasy football began for me. Um, I can't think of many worse performances than this. I know in Andrew's league, Andrew has a family league that he runs. Last year or 2 years ago, David Mecca had like an atrocity of a week, like 45 points in full PPR. That stands as the worst thing I've ever seen. This is a close second. 39.04. Um, I don't know. I don't know what to say. And actually, you know what? This is worse than that because I remember I did the math, right? It would have only been 4.5 more points in full PPR. It would have only been 43.5. So yeah, this is probably the worst I've ever seen. Um, just nothing went well. You had two guys score more than 5.3, one in double digits. And the only reason that one got into double digits was because of a 1 yard touchdown. Take away that, and they would have all been under 10 points. Yeah, I mean this is horrendous. Like you couldn't have drawn up a worse week. Derek Carr came crashing back to earth. Josh Jacobs, I don't know what's going on there because he's getting a ton of volume. Like Josh Jacobs right now, 18 touches, 32, 15. He's the running back 28 on the season. He has no touchdowns. He has 3 receptions for the year. I think the touchdowns will come. Like I'm not super worried about him, but you do always worry in a way with older running backs, which what is he, 20? You know what? He's actually not that old. I'm remembering now. He's been in the league a while, but he might only be like 25, 26. He's 26. So he's not super old, but he's got a ton of usage on him. And you just worry that at any point these running backs can just be done. Like they'll fall off a cliff in a split second. And honestly, for him, it wouldn't be that shocking because last year he was iffy. We'll see. I think Love coming back will help because Love coming back should lead to some more pass catching for him. It should just open up the offense more in general. And but hey, Emmanuel Wilson is he's been better per touch. And the Packers have always liked using multiple running backs. All those years where it was frustrating when Aaron Jones was getting, vultured by AJ Dillon. Who's to say that's not going to happen here again, especially if Jacobs continues to struggle? Ramondre Stevenson, just, I mean, this is wild because he had been so good through 2 weeks, and then he had been 20 plus touches each of the first 2 weeks, a touchdown each week, looking awesome. And then what do you get? You get 6 carries for 23 yards and a fumble. 0.3. I don't know. This was a perfect storm week. Xavier Worthy, nothing. They tried to do a couple of, fluke plays with him. They didn't work. Jordan Whittington didn't play. He didn't matter, right? It was Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson. I don't know how they won that game. Kyron Williams, Jordan Whittington, he didn't factor in. Isaiah Likely, man, come on. Come on. in these recaps, you know, I'm going to hit some and I'm going to miss some. This was a hit by me. I hit this to a T. They do not throw the ball unless they have to. That first game, they needed to throw. They were trailing the entire second half. They were down late. He was getting fed because they needed to throw. These last 2 weeks, they have not needed to throw. They end up losing in week 2, but it was because they blew a late lead. They only were, pass heavy maybe the last possession or 2 of that game. This week, they 15 passing attempts. This is the issue with Likely. It has nothing to do with him as a player. It's the fact that when you're in a situation where they're throwing 20 to 25 times, that is not going to create fantasy viable pass catching options on a week to week basis. That's the issue with Likely. I don't think it's going to turn around. Yes, he could have more spike weeks. And they play Buffalo this week. This could be a week where they have to throw. Maybe he will be good this week. The problem is, for every one of those, you're going to get 3 of these just nothings. And that's why that 77 FAB drop was insane. Bijan Robinson, he did get into the end zone in what ends up being his final game on Krieger's team. We'll discuss that later on. The bench was also largely bad. Rachaad White. This is a problematic situation. Rachaad White is averaging 2.1 per carry because he's not a great pure runner. This has always been known. So he can't get going on the ground. He's yet to top 31 yards rushing in any game. What's keeping him somewhat afloat is his pass catching ability. He is very good at that. He's got 12 receptions on the year, but he's dealing with, he's got that groin injury already. He's got Bucky Irving breathing down his neck. 23rd overall pick, Rachaad White. I don't know. I don't think it's going to work out. Maybe Irving, you never want to root for injury, but maybe Irving goes down at some point and then they're forced to go with Rachaad White the way they did last year. But right now they have no reason not to just like 50-50 that or ride the hot hand. And so White he's got to perform now or he's going to be in some big trouble. Terry McLaurin, who last week I said, I am done. I'm done with McLaurin in fantasy. And again, just like with whoever I talk about a million guys, forget who I was talking. Oh yeah, Likely. It's not about the talent of McLaurin. He's a good player. He's always been a good player, but he just has this inconsistent usage. And he'll have these spike weeks that kind of trap you into thinking like, oh, it's finally happening. And you know what? I bet a bunch of people are thinking that right now. Like it's happening. Look, Jaden Daniels was amazing. He's gonna get going now. But at the end of the day, McLaurin still only had 6 targets. 2 just incredible plays. One was about a 55-yard catch, and then that game-sealing touchdown was just, wizardry from Daniels and McLaurin. And you look at that and you say, this is what can be done. This is what they're capable of. But for whatever reason, it just doesn't happen consistently. And this was a player who came in with 39 yards receiving through 2 weeks. So I think he's a guy that you feel good about having in your flex because on any given week, he can do this. His ability allows him to do this, but just not much consistency ever. That has never been a thing for him. He's still the wide receiver 44 on the year. Yeah, the rest of the Krieger's team didn't really do anything else. So this was horrible. It led Krieger to make a seismic trade, um, 8-player trade between me and him. We'll discuss that later on, but yeah, right now this is the worst team in the league in essentially any metric you want to look at. And so he needed to make a change, and we'll see if it works out. I think it has a chance to for sure. So yeah, we'll move on to a different division, and here was a good matchup. Peter, 117.49 taking down Larar, 107.22. Matchup MVP, weekly MVP, Derrick Henry, 29.9. And I was talking about I've had some hits, I've had some misses. This was a miss as of now. I was out on Henry coming into the year at draft cost. If he was going more in like the late second, early third, I would have been in. But mid second, I wasn't feeling it. But he's been really good, right? The hope was always touchdown based. Like there was that dream of just a ridiculous 15 to 20 touchdown season. And right now he's on pace for that. Right now he's on pace for right around 20. He's got 4 through 3 weeks. My concern, and it still remains, is if he doesn't get into the end zone, what is he? Because there's no pass catching. He has 2 catches so far this season. That's not a thing. That's never been a thing for him. And I think there are going to be weeks where you get 75 yards, and that's it. But if those end up being few and far between, he's going to be really good. I thought that they'd be more like a third of the time. But if this ends up being something that's like a fifth of the time that he does that, then yeah, he's going to absolutely be worth where he was drafted. And I will have been wrong about him, which is the case thus far. He's the running back 4 on the season. Justin Jefferson, he has made Peter look good for being willing to invest in him at 7th overall. You trust that talent, you trust that offense, and Sam Darnold has looked damn good. So he's scored all 3 weeks. And, it's funny, they haven't needed to go crazy throwing the football. That's why Jefferson's targets are a little bit low at just 21 through 3 games. But they have been efficient as hell. And Jefferson is there a better receiver in the NFL than him? I don't know that there is. So as long as he's healthy, as long as Darnold is performing, I feel pretty damn good about him. DK Metcalf, second straight week with a long touchdown. He's always had that in him. What you hope for now is consistency. We know the big play threat that this guy is. For whatever reason, consistency has never been there. And he always kind of ends up like wide receiver 15 to 20. Right now, wide receiver 7. It's what he's capable of. Can he finally put it all together this year? Time will tell. Dalton Kincaid, yes. Yes. Thank you. Fucking finally gets into the end zone. He looked really good early on in that game. And then you want to talk about not needing to throw. Buffalo, the game was over at the end of the first quarter. They pretty much just ran the clock out in the second half. So when they were actually running their real offense, Kincaid looked really good, and it's nice to see. Hopefully he can keep going. The tight end position as a whole needs somebody to establish themselves. Amari Cooper had a big game. Ended up with 2 touchdowns. Right, he had that ridiculous stat that I read last week. I didn't read it. I just did the math in my head. He had 27 yards on 17 targets coming into week 3. So you felt like, that's gotta give a little bit, right? And it did. He ends up with 86 yards on 12 targets, 2 touchdowns. I'm still not I don't feel great about this. This team is a just heaping pile of garbage. Deshaun Watson, you are just a despicable waste of space. But hey, Cooper's good. He's going to be targeted, and so he'll have good games. I just don't trust that it'll be anything where you can rely on him. But he is Peter's flex at the end of the day, so it's not like he's really relying on him anyway. I think the disappointing thing for Peter so far has been Jalen Hurts a little bit. Like, you took him 31st, hoping that he would be just like elite, right? Well, like we've seen him be, and so far he just hasn't been. You got 2 weeks sub 20 points. It's not like he's been bad for fantasy. It's been pretty bad in real life. It's not like he's been bad for fantasy, but quarterback 8, that's not what you drafted. And you didn't draft this 2 performances under 20 points. Like, you take a quarterback that high, you want them to get you 20 to 25 every week with upside for those game breaking 30 to 35s like Josh Allen has done a couple of times. We'll see. Rushing touchdowns not there yet, only 1. Will they come? I don't know, because you have Barkley now instead of DeAndre Swift. And that's a big change for rushing touchdowns for Hurts. You have a legitimate guy in the way right now. The 4 interceptions, that's got to end. It's funny, he's completing over 70% of his passes, and yet he has 4 interceptions. Hasn't had A.J. Brown the last 2 weeks. We'll cut him some slack there. Devontae Smith went out in maybe the 3rd quarter of this game. So he was down his top 2 guys. I think he might be down his top 2 guys again this week as they have a week 5 bye. It would make sense to rest both of those guys. But yeah, Hurts, he's got to get going. And then the running back 2 spot is a just gaping hole for this team. Ezekiel Elliott's done. He's done. All he can really give you at this point is short touchdowns. He's almost like a tight end. Like, you start him and you hope, hey, maybe he scores. And if he does, he probably got you 8 points. If he doesn't, he got you none. But if you're Peter, you're looking at it and you say, hey, Bucky Irving, already talked about that situation. Maybe he can be my running back too. Maybe he starts to take over that backfield, and that's what Peter will be rooting for. It was also nice to see the wide receivers on the bench. Rome Odunze had a big game, and I'll tell you what, it could have been bigger. He ends up 6 for 112 and 1 on 11 targets, and Williams missed him a few times. It could have been more. This was definitely a Dunze's coming out party. See how he does if and when Keenan Allen returns. And Khalil Shakir definitely is the wide receiver you want in Buffalo. Not super high ceiling, but he's definitely, if you're going to start a Buffalo receiver, it is certainly Shakir. He's always been good. He's a fun player. So yeah, Peter, feeling pretty good, right? 4-2, and you're still hoping that Hurts gets going. You're hoping that you could find something at running back too, because through 3 weeks he has had nothing from that spot. Larar lost, and man, was this rough because you could have had a 2-0 week here, and then at the very last moment of Monday night, it turns into an 0-2 week. Pretty gut-wrenching second matchup loss at the hands of Andrew and Zach Moss. Aaron Rodgers had a quality week. 23.85. He's the quarterback, 13 on the season. You know, I think you could do way better, but I guess he's going to be viable. I don't think it's going to be exciting, but I guess he's going to be decent. Low end quarterback one, like in the 15-ish range. I don't know. He's not a guy I wanted anything to do with in fantasy, but so far it's been all right. Dallas Goedert, that was just unreal what he did. It's a little absurd that Larar started him, to be honest. He came in with 10.4 points through 2 weeks, and then he goes 10 for 170. Like, because they didn't have anyone else to throw to. And it ends up being one of the starts of the week. Larar putting him in at flex. Because he had to, right? Like Mixon, Keenan Allen, McCaffrey out. You had to start somebody. So it was, I guess I got to go with Dallas Goedert, and it worked out. It worked out really well. Stephon Diggs had a better game than we know. I've been down on him. He had 12 targets. He was the safety valve. Stroud was under pressure a ton, and it was, he was getting out quick to Diggs. I guess that's his role, right? He's averaging a putrid 8.2 yards per catch. He's their underneath guy. And so on a day where they were being pressured heavily, he showed out. I don't know. I'm not excited about Diggs for fantasy, but maybe he's going to at least be a high floor guy. T. Higgins came back, did nothing in his first game. Better days should be ahead there. Travis Kelce is seemingly done. I think it's, the writing's been on the wall there. This is now 3 weeks of 5 points or less. Kelce probably has a couple more big games in him. Who knows when they'll come? Maybe one will come this week. But yeah, Kelce's days. I don't know that I would start him because you have Goddard now, which is crazy to think that someone like Travis Kelce in a horrible tight end environment isn't even a start. But that's where we're at, I think. I think it's fair to keep trying, but I don't know. He hasn't really done much for the majority of this season and last regular season. He turned it on in the playoffs last year, which he might still be able to do that again this year, but his days of weekly production are well gone by. J.K. Dobbins finally returned to, normalcy, reality, whatever you want to say, facing a stout Pittsburgh defense. Dobbins ended up 15 for 44 and then 3 catches for 10. And, you look at Dobbins now, like everyone was really gushing over him, and for good reason. But there are some holes here in this game, like 7 catches for 14 yards on the season. That's problematic. Anytime you're one of those running backs who has no passing game, like viability, it makes it where you're touchdown dependent. And so he didn't score this week, and he ends up with a bad performance. We'll see. Like, obviously, Dobbins has been an unreal pick so far. Running back 13, you got him in the 10th round, but this showed like let's pump the brakes a little bit. Like he's not going to be the greatest thing ever. Not much to talk about on Larar's bench because they're all injured. Jacoby Myers did have a good game. So funny to me, Jacoby Myers. Like he's just a good player. He just finds a way. Obviously, like you got a bunch of guys there in Vegas with Adams and Bowers, and they have other guys they use too. Again, I watched way too much of that game. They have what Trey Tucker. They have that Meyer guy at tight end who they invested in heavily last year. And just Jacoby Myers somehow just finds a way to produce. He's the wide receiver 28 on the season. But yeah, Larar ends up with a really rough 0-2 week. All right, Klingman defeats Das Gift 111.14, 111.14 to 85-19. That's the final score in this one. Matchup MVP and the ad of the week, Brock Purdy, 28.7. What a huge move by Klingman. Truly. Going with Purdy wins him the second matchup. I mean, there are plenty of streaming quarterbacks he could have gone with who would have put him below Larar. And so Klingman got himself a win with that ad of Purdy. That is big time. Malik Neighbors. Unbelievable what this man is doing. The dream with him was that he was going to be the only show in town. That was the hope. Like, he's all they got, and they are going to just force it to him. That's what's happened. He has 37 targets through 3 weeks. He already looks like one of those alpha studs. He's doing this in an iffy offense with an iffy quarterback 3 games into his career. It's impressive. He is the wide receiver 1. Klingman got him 52nd overall. And I have regrets not investing in him anywhere. And it was simply that I wanted to stay away from that offense. And I regret it. I really do. I think that Neighbors, because again, that offense is still pretty questionable. I think he'll have some bad weeks. But man, when you're getting these targets and you're as talented as this guy is, good things are going to come. Klingman has to be really happy to have Neighbors on his team. He has to be really happy to have Breece Hall on his team, who's gone for 15.8 or more all 3 weeks. The rushing hasn't even come yet. He hasn't topped 62 yards rushing. It hasn't mattered because he's got 3 touchdowns and he's got 4+ receptions in every game. High floor, high ceiling. He is elite. I think if we redrafted, I think he goes first overall. Brian Robinson's been good. Running back 15. Double digits all 3 weeks. He is touchdown dependent. Again, he doesn't catch the ball. 5 receptions this year. That is not part of his game. I think I made this comparison last year. He is very much a poor man's Nick Chubb. Quality runner, no pass catching, and you need him to get into the end zone. He's done it twice so far this year. I just think he's a good running back too. I think you put him in that spot, you feel pretty good about it most weeks. Olave, finally, right? Fucking finally. 6 for 86 and a score. Still only 6 targets. That I don't like. This is the opposite of Malik Neighbors, right? Neighbors, 37 targets on the year. Olave, 14. Don't like that. but at least he finally had a good game. Olave, maybe he's going to join that DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin uh, tier, right? Talented receivers who are always in like a questionable situation and they always kind of tease you, but never bring it consistently. Maybe Olave is going to be the next one of those type of guys because so far in his career, that is what he's been. The rest of the team was just, whatever. Zach Ertz, unbelievable, right? Tight end 10. What is he, 90 years old now? And he's been right between 4 and 8.5 points all 3 weeks, which is for as horrible as the tight end position is, that's like pretty good. That's consistent. Jaden Daniels looks to him in big spots. It's really a funny thing. Never did I think in 2024 that we'd be talking about Zach Ertz as like I mean he's a fine back end tight end one. We'll see if that continues. Smith and Jigba, yeah, one great week, two poor ones. How does this make sense? You had 2 targets week 1, 16 week 2, 3 week 3. What is that? What the hell is that? I don't know what to say. Roller coaster, right? Michael Pittman, that continues to be, it's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy. I love Michael Pittman as a player, and it is really sickening to see that Richardson cannot get him the ball. Like, come on now. 36 yards. He had 36 yards this week. That's a season high. Bullshit. Ken Walker, he's been out. So if you're Klingman, you got to feel pretty good, right? You got three solid running backs, Hall, Robinson, and Walker. Olave, you feel amazing about Neighbors. You feel okay about Olave, and then you just hope, hey, can we get somebody? Can we get, whether it's Smith and Jigba, whether it's Pittman, even DeAndre Hopkins, who looked good in this one. Just give me one more receiver. Give me one of those guys to work out, and you feel pretty good about this team. But Klingman, big 2-0 week. And for Mecca, really bad performance. And it starts with the guy I just mentioned, Anthony Richardson. It's blowing my mind. I feel like I'm watching a fucking circus every week. Like, the guy he either makes one of the greatest plays you've ever seen or one of the worst plays you've ever seen. There's no in between. Like, it's unfathomable, this Anthony Richardson experience. And I think it absolutely can still work out. This guy is so young. He has such little experience. He's essentially a rookie, and he didn't have much college experience. Like, all the tools are there. Everything that I felt from the day they drafted him, I still feel the same way. Insane tools. Let's see if he can develop, accuracy and touch and being able to read a defense. But right now, it is ugly. And just getting away from talking about real life, for fantasy, it's ugly because he does not run anymore. Each of the last 2 weeks, under 40 yards rushing. He has 18 attempts through 3 weeks. That's why you took him. You took him because you thought he's going to give me a rushing baseline, and anything he does with his arm will just be icing on the cake. Well, right now, there's no rushing baseline, and he can't complete a pass, except for 60-yard bombs to Alec Pierce, which he does once a week. I don't know. They still like running him down along the goal line. That's good. You feel like rushing touchdowns will come. He had one in week 1. I could see him ending up with 10 rushing scores on the season, and that will be helpful. But this floor that he has of like 6.75, this isn't what you drafted. Mecca's 2 big receivers, second straight week where they delivered. And Ra. What a stud. Just an absolute stud. 17 for him. And Marvin Harrison, another 15 points for him, 11 targets. I think you feel amazing about those two. But the rest of this team, I don't know that there's anything to really feel good about. The running backs are what they are. Jerome Ford is just the definition of mediocre. They have an issue with him. He hasn't had more than 12 carries in any game this year. And dating back to week 3 of last year, that's kind of like the number. They don't give him more than 12 carries very often. I don't know why. They just don't. So he's a back end running back too. These other guys, I don't know. Carson Steele, I could see being interesting. I thought his involvement was way better than I expected it to be. He comes out 17 carries. He only had 1 reception, but he ran a pretty fair amount of routes. And so I feel good about that. I think it's pretty obvious that Steele is their lead guy. At least that's what they want. But we'll see how Kareem Hunt factors in. We'll see how, what they do with Samaje Perine. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, according to Mike Tirico on Sunday night, he's going to come back next week. That's what the Chiefs expect. So who knows what's going to happen here. I don't think Carson Steele is going to become I don't think he's the next Peyton Hillis, but he could be a running back too. Team's got to get healthy too. Like, you got to get Kupp back. You're hoping within a month. You got to get Kittle back, because this team, and hey, shout out Jalen Naylor. Love that start from Matt. He scored a 3rd straight week, but that's completely unsustainable. He currently has 3 touchdowns on 9 targets. That's funny. He's in big trouble with the state of his running backs and the state of Anthony Richardson. He needs his wide receivers and tight end to carry him. So you need Kittle back, you need Kupp back. And you're just hoping that Steele, I guess Ford, you're hoping for them to get into the end zone, which Ford hasn't done yet, correct? He did in week 1. So he only has 1. You need that from him. Maybe Cam Akers gets another start, but it's not looking good for Mecca. It certainly isn't. That the 0 running back hasn't worked out. And he's still 3-3, so by no means is he in a bad spot, but the team is really trending downward as of now. Let's get to the final division. That's my division. Andrew defeating my team 108.71 to 92.14. Andrew, the matchup MVP. Josh, the Tank Allen, 33.55. Quarterback won 2 weeks this season with 33 points. He had 11 in week 2 because he didn't need to do anything. Josh Allen right now is the MVP favorite. I think for a while now, he's been my favorite quarterback to watch in the NFL. He makes those boneheaded mistakes, right? But the guy's just so damn fun to watch. And guess what? Those boneheaded mistakes, they ain't happening so far this year. No interceptions for Josh Allen. We got to give credit to Joe Brady for that and the offense that he has designed. They started doing it late last year when Brady took over. They changed their offense. They made it more about the running game. They made it more about short passing. And they have stuck with that. And right now, it's a really good formula for them. And I really do hope that it lasts. I have gravitated towards Allen and the Bills because it feels very similar to the rivalry that I grew up with as a kid, right? I was the Colts Peyton Manning guy, always going up against the Patriots and Brady. Allen feels like the Manning, and the Bills feel like the Colts in this scenario. And that's why I've always found myself pulling for them. And I like the Chiefs too. I like Mahomes and the Chiefs. But a big part of me just can't help but pull for this Bills team and for Allen. And I really do hope that this is their year. We'll see. They're off to a great start. And that includes James Cook. And again, we talked about my hits and my misses. This might be my biggest miss. I did not believe in James Cook at all. I didn't think he had it in him to be the centerpiece of an offense, but he is. He is their centerpiece. He's been great. And those touchdowns, they're coming in droves suddenly, right? It's like the dam broke and now it's just touchdown after touchdown for James Cook, 4 in the last 2 weeks, and he could have more than that too. They've been destroying teams so bad they haven't had to use Cook in the second half. That's why he's only got 11 carries each of the last 2 weeks. But there's passing game involvement, not insane involvement, but I really liked what I saw on Monday night in that department. And they use him. They've been using him more inside the 5 than they had in the past, and that could simply be they're deciding, you know what, Cook is good enough down here. Let's not get Allen injured. Let's just give it to him. And it's all turning out differently than I expected. And he is the running back 5 on the season. And Andrew, who invested heavily in him across multiple fantasy football leagues, is looking really wise for doing so. Zach Moss with the most important touchdown of the week for Andrew, because you want to know something crazy? You know, I end up losing this matchup by 16 points. If Zach Moss scored down there at the end, if that had instead been a touchdown to Jamar Chase, right? This is what, when you have a quarterback receiver stack like I did with Burrow Chase, if Burrow had thrown the touchdown pass to Chase down there at the end, I believe I would have won. I either would have lost or won by half a point. It would have been within that range. So that's how important this Zach Moss touchdown not only won Andrew the second matchup over Larar, but it also prevented Chase from potentially winning the real matchup for me. So that ended up potentially being a 2-game swing, getting Zach Moss into the end zone in garbage time there. And he looked really good. He ended up with 18.2. You know, Moss hasn't had more than 12 carries in any game. And you don't love that. But he's the running back 19, and he's just been kind of like the prototypical running back 2. And that's all that Andrew needs him to be, because he waited on that spot. He took him in the 8th round, and so far it's paying off. I don't know if it will continue to, but it's so far so good for Moss. Now, the rest of Andrew's team was not very good. He got a big blow up from Jets defense. Whatever. Kicker didn't give him much, so you only get 20 or so points between those 2 spots. It's nothing really remarkable. And this is reminding me, I didn't really talk about those spots in the other matchups. It was pretty ugly. I want to quickly mention Kaimi Fairbairn because Kaimi Fairbairn came in. This is Colin's kicker, by the way. He came in with 37 points through 2 weeks, 17 and then 20. He had 0 in week 3. That's, I don't know. It had been such a great stretch for kickers the first 2 weeks, and then this week it was awful. Defense has been weird too, but yeah, Andrew got a big performance there. However, CeeDee Lamb in a week where Dak threw it 51 times for 400 yards, 379, but I rounded up. Okay, kill me. For CeeDee to go 4 for 67, yeah, he's the wide receiver 19. All these holdout guys, all these big holdout guys, right? Ayuk, Chase, Lamb. None of them have been elite yet. They've all had like a big well, Ayuk hasn't done shit. Lamb had a good week 2, Chase had a good week 3, but they aren't their usual selves. It's almost like, getting reps in practice means something. So yeah, Lamb, 6.7 points. Devontae Smith was having a nice game before he went out with that concussion. And I really do think he will miss now. He's been nice, right? Wide receiver 11, 7 catches all 3 games, between 76 and 84 yards all 3 games. He's been fun to have, but 2 of these weeks have been without AJ Brown. And so we'll see what he is when AJ is healthy. Mark Andrews. God. 0 points for Mark Andrews. 1 target. He played 33% of snaps. He's got a nice 8 targets on the season. He might be done. He might be done. They don't throw. He might be done. I would be panicking at this point. Now, I think Andrews has, I feel similarly to him as I do about Kelsey. I think he'll have some games, but 6 catches through 3 weeks, like, and I guess you got to look back on it now, and maybe we should have seen this coming. Maybe I should have seen this coming. This is a guy who has suffered quite a few injuries. And last year, he suffered a pretty significant one on that hip drop tackle that, fucked up his leg. It might just be taking its toll. And yeah, this is an issue. This is a big issue. And the other thing too with Mark Andrews is he has never excelled as a blocker. I remember when he was, at his peak as a weapon in their passing game, he would have like there would always be crazy stats that would come out that like he has like two run blocking snaps all season. That's not his thing. He's not like George Kittle. He's not an all-around tight end. So when they have one of these games where they want to just pound the rock, he doesn't need to play. They have other guys. They have Big Pat Ricard, their fullback. They have a blocking tight end. I can't think of his name. Charlie Kolar, I think it might be. They don't need Mark Andrews when they're just going to commit to the run. And that's why he only played a third of snaps in this game. So yeah, it's a concern. Calvin Ridley's been up and down. When isn't he? Right? This is exactly what he was last year. Nothing, great, nothing. Maybe he'll be great this week. Maybe he'll be nothing. Who knows? That's what Calvin Ridley is. It's the same shit as last year. Andrew's bench is pretty putrid. Rashid Shaheed just did nothing. he did nothing. He's a classic boomer bust. he's a nice guy to have. Like Andrew got him 14th round. He's talented. He's a good guy to throw into your flex. But yeah, I mean, I think people were going a little crazy. Like I was seeing some stuff on social media, like, oh, Shaheed, like he's a wide receiver too now. No, he's just that classic big play boomer bust. And as long as you realize that, pretty good guy to have. Yeah, some of these other guys have been disappointing, like Tajay Spears and Lad McConkey. Andrew does hold one of the ultimate, two of the ultimate handcuffs in Tyler Algier and Braylon Allen. I will talk about Braylon Allen a little bit when I do the FAB segment for the week. I'm all in, big into Braylon Allen right now. But yeah, let's shift to my team first. Andrew, 5-1. He's off to a great start. Let's give him some respect. We like to pile on Andrew. He's off to a nice start. I lost 92.14 points. Really, the only thing that went well for me was the Burrow Chase stack scoring. I mean, they combined for 55 points. So elite production from those two. Jamar Chase finally did something. He was about as good as you could be. 6 catches, 118 and 2 on just 7 targets. And Chase, the targets are low, right? 18 through 3 weeks. He's got 16 catches on 18 targets. I don't know. I think Chase is going to end up being his usual self for fantasy, but it's just frustrating that those first 2 weeks were so bad. The rest of the team, Nico Collins ends up with 10.6. This was funny. At the end of that game, Davis Mills came in, and I'm watching this live, and Mills just absolutely force fed Nico Collins the ball on a garbage time drive. I think 5 of his 10 targets came on the last possession, and 4 of them were on 4 consecutive throws with a 2-goal situation. So 1st and goal, 2nd and goal, 3rd and goal, 4th and goal. Davis Mills took 4 straight end zone shots to Nico Collins. Of course, none of them were hauled in. But man, it was funny to see that just garbage time trash of Davis Mills leaning on Collins. Collins has been awesome. He was a little banged up this week, and I could tell like his snaps were down a little bit at points, and he still found a way to be productive. Jordan Mason was all right in his final game for my team. Didn't get into the end zone. He had chances to. And this is, again, it's so, like, there are so many running backs like this. These guys who don't catch the ball. Jordan Mason has 4 receptions on the season. You don't catch it. If you don't score, you're not going to be happy. Like, you get this 9.8 points on a day where he had 21 touches because he doesn't catch the ball and he didn't find pay dirt. And so, it just wasn't a great performance. But if that's his floor, you feel great. Brock Bowers didn't produce in his final game for my team. I said this a few times already. I watched too much of that game. I don't like the fact that he only plays 2/3 of snaps. Meyer is out there a ton. And yeah, they run 2 tight end, but there's plenty of times it's only Meyer. Maybe that changes as the season goes on, but what was he, a 2nd round pick? Let's see here. Type into the old computer, Michael Meyer. I want to say he was a 2nd round pick. What is going on? Yeah, he was taken 35th overall last year. So obviously this is a guy they believe in. And it's not realistic to expect that he's just going to go away. And so that hurts the Brock Bowers ceiling for sure. Brock Bowers has got to be on the field more than 66% of the time. That's a joke. Hopefully he will as the season goes on. But yeah, I end up with the worst sit of the week. Early on I was thinking, hey, let's go with Hubbard, and then I thought, no, fuck that. I thought, let's go with the hot hand of Bowers, and that ends up costing me 2 wins. So, worst sit of the week. Hubbard was unreal. 26 touches, like 160 total yards, a touchdown. Just like Deontay Johnson, as long as Big Andy Dalton is back there, gonna enjoy starting Hubbard. But then Bryce Young will come back and ruin it for everybody. Trey McBride, rough game, and then he ended up, God, why did he fucking lowered his head into the defender? Helmet-to-helmet contact, concussed both of them. He's probably going to miss this week now. I don't know. Yeah, McBride's been a little disappointing. I think he'll be okay. The underlying stats for him are pretty encouraging, but definitely not what you want to see. James Conner, bad game. That Arizona offense just struggled. And like I feel like every time I tuned in, like Kyler Murray was immediately under pressure of Aiden Hutchinson or somebody else, and he had to get it out in a split second. He kept dumping it down to Michael Wilson, who I like. But it was just like, that was the only thing I saw of their offense every time I turned them on. Yeah, it was a bad week for my team, certainly. Jaden Daniels, good on the bench. How about my defense, special teams? I've gotten like a combined -8 the last 2 weeks. I'm an idiot. I don't know. I really I didn't want to start Las Vegas. I didn't want to do it because once Andy got named the starter, I thought they'll be solid. But I also thought it's Andy Dalton. He's 36. He's immobile. They'll be able to get some sacks. Maybe there's an interception because he's a bit of a gunslinger. And none of that. It would have been nice to know that Max Crosby, who typically plays every snap and has one of the highest motors in the league, would have been nice to know that Max Crosby was going to be limited. But I wasn't looking at the injury report, and I only have myself to blame for that. Didn't really end up mattering probably because I lost by 16. So still, I got to be better with that shit. There's been some bad luck, but also just I'm being foolish. So yeah, I dropped this one and it fall to 3-3. One more matchup, Dylan. Oh, big Dylan, yay. 115.71 to 84.43. He takes down Sam. Matchup MVP. Let's give it to Zach Charbonnet, 24.2 points. And you look at Charbonnet, right? What a huge lift he has been to this team. Double digits all 3 weeks. In the last 2 weeks as a starter, 15.4 and 24.2. He is the running back 9 as a 10th round pick. I don't think this will continue to be good when Ken Walker eventually returns. But Dylan's gotten important production out of him in a time where he needed it because he's down Nakua. DeAndre Swift sucks. So he needed a running back 2, and instead you got a running back 1 out of Charbonnet. Dylan, you got to feel bad for him, right? Because he's had so many crushing injuries like Nick Chubb, who He drafted knowing he was injured. Now he lost Adam Thielen. What a gut-wrenching loss that is of the wide receiver 53. He lost Jake Ferguson for a game. Brutal, brutal luck for Dylan with injuries. So it's nice to see that he was, he earned some luck getting Zach Charbonnet as a piece that's been playable because of the Walker injury. But again, yeah, Dylan, no one has had it as tough as Dylan has when it comes to bad luck. You can't reiterate enough how snake bitten this poor guy has been. And really, I don't know how he's going to continue to work through these injuries, especially with this, again, this just brutal Thielen hamstring injury. I don't know how he's going to recover from this, but it's going to be inspiring to watch him try, and we'll see what Dylan's able to accomplish. But as for the rest of the storylines with his team this week, CJ Stroud, he was horrendous. That Minnesota defense is no joke. They made him look like a fucking nobody. Stroud hasn't been good, right? Quarterback 15, you took him in the 5th round. That's been a bad pick so far. So he's got to get it going, without a doubt. Jonathan Taylor was really good. Jonathan Taylor he's himself. He is still Jonathan Taylor. He was good at the end of last year. He has picked up where he left off. Back-to-back 100-plus yard games. 2 touchdowns in this one. Again, he is Nick Chubb. He's Derrick Henry. Add any other name you want. There's no pass catching, but he's as good of a pure runner as the league has. That Colts line has reestablished itself as a quality one. And the Colts, they need to run their offense through this guy. They need to feed him the football. If they're going to win games, it's going to be because of Jonathan Taylor. And I think Steichen is realizing that with this 24-touch performance that we saw here. So Taylor up to running back 8. Just stay healthy. Please stay healthy, because you're kind of all the Colts have right now. Davante Adams, this is going to be this is the Davante Adams experience of the last 2 seasons. Some good, some shit. 2 shit so far this year. 1 good. They might be changing quarterbacks. Aiden O'Connell he helped Adams last season. So maybe they go to Aiden O'Connell. Maybe that will be a good thing for Big Davante. DJ Moore, wide receiver 39. This pains me. And Dylan loves DJ Moore. I'm sure it pains him too. 28 targets. Like, the targets are there, but it's just Big Caleb Williams is just overthrowing him every fucking time. Caleb Williams, of course, I watched almost all of this game with it being the Colts. Caleb Williams is awful right now. So, yeah, it's a shame. And you know what? The only reason that DJ Moore had 11.2 is he caught a deflected ball. It was an end-of-half Hail Mary that was deflected in the end zone to DJ Moore, who was standing on the 2, and he got tackled at the 1. Like fucking 50 of his yards came on that. So this would have been a horrible performance without that complete fluke play. Jake Ferguson, quality game. I like Jake Ferguson for fantasy this year, again, because Dallas, they need to throw. And he's kind of their second, third option. 11 targets. He's a good player. I think Ferguson will be a nice tight end to have in fantasy this year. Now, everything else, right? Like, but first, let's talk about Juwan Jennings, who Dylan left on the bench, and he did consider starting him. Fortunately, it didn't cost Dylan anything. This ends up the best ad of the week. 41 out of Juwan Jennings. 11 for 175 and 3. absurd career day. And again, Juwan Jennings, he's always been good. He's just been buried on their depth chart. We saw last year in the playoffs, Juwan Jennings was a big piece of their team. In the Super Bowl, there was a point where I thought he was going to be Super Bowl MVP. He gets the job done. He's just a quality football player. And it was really nice to see him get a chance and succeed like this. I mean, do I think that he's going to be great now for fantasy? No, because eventually those guys are going to come back. But until they do, Juwan Jennings could be a really nice flex play for Dylan, and he needs one because DeAndre Swift is awful. The Bears' offensive line is horrible, just horrendous. But so is DeAndre Swift. Like, he doesn't get them anything. He really doesn't get them anything. 37 carries for 68 yards this year, 1.8 per carry, 6 catches for 46. Like, I don't know what they shouldn't play him. They shouldn't play him. Running back 42. So he's yet to top 6.2 fantasy points. If you're Dylan, you're lucky you have Charbonnet. Because I don't know what he's going to do at running back 2 when Walker inevitably returns. Who else does he have? He has Antonio Gibson. Like, he's going to end up with an iffy situation at that spot long term. But yeah, for now, you could throw Jennings into flex. Like, that could be big for the upcoming week. Huge for Dylan to get these 2 wins. We had all been hoping that he would fall to 0-6, and unfortunately, he did find a way to keep his season alive. And, he's right in it. He's right in the bunch with everybody else now. Sam loses here, really rough week. You take away 24.78 from Packers defense and special teams, courtesy of Will Levis. You got 60 points from the rest of the squad. Kyler Murray, he did all he could, really. I'm surprised he even had 16 points because truly it felt like they did nothing all day. He had that 1 touchdown pass to Harrison, and the rushing continues to be there. Between 45 and 60 yards rushing all 3 weeks. That's a good thing. You want that to remain if you're Sam. You give me a 5-yard or a 5-point rushing baseline, I feel pretty good about Murray. Chris Godwin, again. Chris Godwin, man. Wide receiver 3. This 14.3 points was his low of the year, but he's got 8+ targets all 3 games. He's gotten into the end zone 3 straight weeks. Chris Godwin, one of the picks of the draft thus far. The good news ends there. Mike Evans, quietly back-to-back down weeks. He has been, it's been Godwin. Last year was all Evans, right? Like, last year, Evans dominated. Godwin. God, I called him Godwins. Godwin was nothing. This year, it's the reverse. I think Evans will be fine, but I'm very confused by 15 targets through 3 weeks. They were down in this game. He ends up with 3 targets. Crazy. We'll see. Hopefully he gets going. But yeah, I don't think it's, and I said from the beginning of the year, I don't think it's going to work having both of them. I just don't. And then having 2 Dolphins, which after week 1, it was like, oh, this is fucking awesome. Tyreek Hill, Achane, this is going to be sick. Now it's a fucking horror film. Like, what a shame. Tyreek Hill, 5.5 or less the last 2 weeks. 11 targets the last 2 weeks. 3 catches each of the last 2 games. Devon Achane goes for 7.3. Just terrible. Terrible. 2 amazing players ruined by the fact that Miami didn't even roster a competent backup. No one's saying you need to have a fucking MVP as your backup quarterback. But you can't have Skylar Thompson. Like, pay the couple of million to have an Andy Dalton, to have Joe Flacco, to have somebody who, if they need to come in for 4 weeks, Gardner Minshew. I mean, he, of course, got paid a little bit more this year because Vegas had intentions of him starting. But still, you get what I'm saying. Pay somebody decent so that when your quarterback goes down for a month or two, your season doesn't just unravel. You can't have a practice squad quarterback as your backup. We'll see what Miami does. It's they have Tyler Snoop Huntley, one-time Pro Bowler, when like 10 quarterbacks in front of him declined invites. You know, Huntley, he was decent with Baltimore. He was always fine. I think he's a big improvement over Skylar Thompson. I would imagine that's who's going to start this week. It's just tough. It's tough to see it getting really good for these two guys until Tua returns. Sam Laporta's been rough. Tight end 17. 2 targets. He got banged up in this game. Ankle sprain. He came back for like 2 plays and then left for good. Sounds like he's going to be fine. It's just like a common ankle sprain. It's not high. So he should be okay. But the involvement is still terrible. 10 targets through 3 weeks. Got to see that improve. Big, Monday night showdown coming up against Seattle. And then they go into their bye. And then, we've been talking about my hits and misses. This was one of my biggest hits so far is Zamir White. Said in the draft recap, Krieger and I both did. We said we're way out on him. We both said that Devin Singletary would be the guy to be Sam's running back too, and so far that has been dead on. Zamir White has not topped 5.3 points in any game. He just seemingly isn't good. He's in a bad offense. I think he is bad. And he does not stay in passing down situations. For whatever reason, Alexander Mattison comes in along the goal line. So you're a bad player at a bad offense who doesn't have passing down work or goal line work. So you're irrelevant, essentially. I thought this would maybe be a good spot for him against Carolina, but then they fell behind, and so that was it. They didn't play him. Zamir White ends up playing 24% of snaps. Madison played about 45, and then Amir Abdullah was in for a decent bit. And yeah, it's rough. It's pretty bad. He's unplayable and borderline droppable. Devin Singletary, on the other hand, has been great. Running back 18, he has made up for that bad pick of White thus far. And Singletary looks like a guy that I think you could count on as a running back too. And I thought he'd be that way this season. The rest of Sam's bench hasn't been great. Christian Kirk, what's he looking like this year? Wow. Wide receiver 71. He's just been part of that shit Jacksonville offense. He did have 10 targets on Monday. That's why I thought it had been better. But he did nothing through 2 weeks. I didn't realize he had 2 catches through 2 weeks. So, yeah, Sam's bench not great. And he's going to be hoping for those Dolphins to get going because without that, it's going to be tough for a couple of weeks here. We know that Sam will find a way. He always finds a way. He looked dead last year on multiple occasions, ends up winning the league. You never count Sam out, but he definitely has his work cut out for him right now with this team because there have been some bad picks and then some really bad luck as well with that Dolphins situation. That's a shame. All right, let's quickly recap FAB from last week. There aren't many interesting options on FAB this week. So instead, I want to just recap last week because last week ended up being quite interesting. Starting with Lohan going heavy on Kareem Hunt, 30 FAB for Kareem. I personally think it was just a gross overpay. No one else bid more than 4. I think if you wanted to throw like 10 on Hunt, all right, I get it. If you wanted to even go as high as 15, I'd say, all right. I wouldn't have really recommended doing so, but I would have understood it. 30, I think, is insane. I'd be really surprised if Kareem Hunt has much left in the tank. We'll see. I personally see it as Carson Steele will be the guy. P. Ryan, passing downs. Like Carson Steele early down, short yardage. P. Ryan passing downs. And then Hunt kind of mixing in for both. And then it just, they're going to probably just try to ride whoever's doing the best. You have this Edwards-Hilaire situation too. Like, who knows? Who the hell knows? But there's just no way I would have dumped that amount on Hunt. Matt ends up getting Carson Steele, 27. That makes sense to me, like 20-ish, I would have figured. So Mecca ends up tacking on a little extra to make sure he got him because he needed him. So desperate at running back. Made sense to me. Here was the big one. I loved this move by Andrew. 18 for Braylon Allen. Now, on the surface, you maybe feel that's an overpay because he's a handcuff. But Mecca bid 17. So Andrew wins it by one fab. One fab dollar. That's awesome. I mean, what a feeling that must have been for him to see that. I had it at 16 for Allen originally, and I thought, it's like I could probably drop it down. I end up going down to 12. Turns out I wouldn't have won him with 16 either. I needed to go up at 20. And I think Allen is amazing. I think you just watch him, and there is so much explosiveness. Just big guy, good speed, and they're using him right. Hey, let's see his involvement. 11 carry, like 14 touches. He basically didn't play week 1. Then he gets 9 touches week 2, produced with them, and they decided we got to feed this guy. We got to get him the ball. He ends up with 14 touches in week 3. Now, I think in games where they're trailing, he'll have some weeks where he probably has like 5 touches. But it feels like a situation where if you ever have to throw him in at running back 2, you ever have to throw him in at flex, you're not going to feel horrible about that. And that's a nice piece to have. And you also know that if anything were to happen to Breece Hall, you've got what's happened with Jordan Mason in San Francisco, I think would happen with Braylon Allen. I think you would have an instantaneous running back 1. And that's why I wanted him so badly. And hey, I give Andrew a ton of credit. I thought that was a great bid and a great win. Sam gets Samaje Perine. Made sense to me to take a shot on him. He didn't look very good this past week, but in games where they're trailing, Perine should be better off. The only thing is, how many games will they be trailing? I don't know. And will you know when those games are coming? Not much else to talk about here. Just always interesting, seeing how FAB plays out in any given week. It's fascinating for sure. Do have to quickly analyze that big trade that Krieger and I made. That was a funny one because we were having preliminary discussions and like we were way off on what we wanted to get done. He sent out what I viewed as like an absurd offer over text. Then we end up going to the classic Krieger FaceTime. That's his go-to. And we're having like an hour and a half discussion about different things in the league, different things in life even. What a beautiful discussion this was. And at at fucking like 2 a.m. we we come to an agreement on this 8-player trade. And then we decide to just wait until 3 a.m. for rosters to unlock. That's why he accepted it at 3 on the dot. But from my perspective on this trade, the reason I made it was when Pacheco went down, I felt the need to secure like a long-term running back one. And because I didn't want to be caught in a situation where McCaffrey returns at some point, Pacheco never gets right from his ankle injury, and I'm left with like a fucking a hole on my team. So I really felt like I needed to get another really good running back, and I knew I had the pieces to do so. I did cash in a ton of my depth, if not all of it. So, yeah, you give up a ton. Like, you give up Burrow. That wasn't easy to give up because I have that stack with Chase. Ultimately, Burrow's kind of whatever because he's a pocket passer, but still, it was nice to have that stack with Chase. Look what they just gave me 3 hours before I traded the guy. You give up Mason, who could end up being. Look, if McCaffrey never comes back, it was a mistake for me to do that. I just didn't want to get caught. I didn't want to. Hey, I didn't want in like 2 weeks for us to get a report of McCaffrey's going to be back in 2 weeks because then I'd be fucked. That's what's so tough about Mason. Like, it could come out any moment that McCaffrey is either done for the season or that he's going to be back. And that's going to completely dictate Mason's value. So I just thought, let's kind of cash in that chip while the value is still sky high. Give up Deebo Samuel, who I love as a player, but you got to give to get. And I was willing to do that with my wide receiver 3. Cortland Sutton, I don't care about. I was getting close to dropping him. And then Brock Bowers, that one really hurt because he feels like he could be what Sam Laporta was last year. And it may be a big mistake that I gave him up. That's the one that hurt the most. I really hope I don't regret giving up Bowers. Time will tell. As for Krieger, I would have loved to have him on. There was a point where he said he was going to be on the recap this week, but for the 3rd straight week, I had someone flake out on me. People just they aren't built like me. They aren't built for the grind of these recaps. But yeah, Krieger, I would have loved to get his take. It's obvious why he did it. He had like 4 holes on his team and he was able to fill all of them, right? You get a viable quarterback, you get a viable tight end, you get help in that wide receiver room that was so ugly, and you still get, the drop. Again, if McCaffrey doesn't come back, the drop off from Bijan to Mason isn't that steep. And so it made a ton of sense for him. He did give up 2 receivers who I'm pretty intrigued by. Brian Thomas, I really like. I think he's easily the top target in Jacksonville. And I think he's going to be quite good if Lawrence can become competent. I think Thomas could be a really fun flex this year. So that was a big part of it for me, was like, I thought, yeah, it sucks to give up Deebo, but I'm happy getting Brian Thomas back. And Xavier Worthy is interesting too, because obviously he's attached to the Chiefs. They're going to use him in inventive ways. And Rashee Rice got off to a slow start last year too. Let's remember, he was basically nothing through the first month before turning into a league-winning asset. Who's to say that Xavier Worthy won't have a similar ascension? I'm not necessarily counting on it, but I'm more than happy to take the chance and see what might happen in the NFL's best designed offense, playing with Pat Mahomes and just being in that overall great situation. So wild trade, hectic as fuck. It's going to take a long time before we can really analyze it and decide who won it, but it's fun to make a big trade like that every once in a while. And now the funny thing too is that Krieger and I face off against each other. So let's get to the power rankings and the week 4 matchups. Nothdurft in a just tier of his own at number 1. Andrew, who had cried last week about being 4th, he's now 2nd. Hopefully I don't hear any more bitching from Andrew. I drop a spot to 3rd, and then it's Horvath jumping from 5 to 4. Horvath and I are pretty interchangeable at those 3 and 4 spots. Peter jumps from 7th up to 5th, and it's Colin with a 2-spot leap from 8 to 6. Sam drops quite a bit here, 3rd down to 7th, and then Lorran with his quality week goes from 11th up to 8th. Mecca tumbles a little bit from 6th to 9th. Larar stays steady at 10th. It's Dylan jumping a spot from 12th to 11th. And Krieger, the big loser of the week, goes from 9th down to the bottom. Krieger rounding us out at number 12. Week 4 matchups. This is an important week upcoming. As mentioned already, we will see myself against Krieger, the 2 Jacob Samuels facing off after their midnight trade. Also, the first time that we have non-divisional matchups, right? So that's always a fun time. We've got 2 and 4 Sam against 3 and 3 Colin. Sam, really important spot for him. You'll be looking for a win in that. And Colin trying to get over 500 if he can go 2-0 this week. Dylan has to face the freight train that is Nothdurft. 2 and 4 Dylan against 6-0 Matt N. Can Nothdurft show some vulnerability? We'll see. Great matchup here. Probably the matchup of the week on paper is 5 and 1 Andrew against 4 and 2 Peter. Great quarterback play in that one. Some really exciting wide receivers and quality running back ones as well. So that's a fun matchup. Andrew off to that great 5 and 1 start. Big swing week for Horvath and Mecca. They both come in 3 and 3. Feel good about Horvath in this matchup, but you never know. And then rounding it out, we've got 2 and 4 Lorran against 2 and 4 Larar. The loser of that one is going to be in a little bit of trouble. And feeling good about Lorran, unless Larar can get pieces back healthy. We'll see. We'll see with Joe Mixon. That's going to be key, is getting Mixon back in the lineup. But yeah, we got 3 weeks down. The first set of divisional matchups are over. Week 4 is upon us. This was another long recap. What can you do? I like talking about this stuff too much. All right. Well, hey, have a great week, everybody. And, see you in a week. Goodbye.